Wir haben die Stadt Helmond besucht. Diese liegt ungefähr eine Autostunde von der deutschen Grenze entfernt und bietet den typischen niederländischen Charme, in dem man sich sehr schnell verlieben kann. Doch der Grund, weshalb wir hier sind, ist das HomeComputer Museum. Hier läuft man durch eine wahre Zeitkapsel. Doch bevor wir die Ausstellung im Detail ansehen, sollten wir das Museum und dessen Gründer näher kennenlernen.
So yeah, my name is Bart van Akker. I'm the founder of the HomeComputer Museum in the Netherlands. I think I consider myself as a guy who loves old computers, tells story about old computers, and I'd love to help people.
Was genau ist das HomeComputer Museum?
The HomeComputer Museum is a museum, an interactive computer museum, hands-on, where we show the history of the computer that can be used at home, or the computer that has influence on the way we use a computer at home. We currently have over 2,000 computers over here. Most of them are working. They're not all set up in the museum because we don't have that much space, but we have about 500 computers set up. And if we also calculate all the items we have, including monitors or software, documentation, disk drives, you name it. If we calculate all those things together, we have over 23,000 objects in the museum, and making us one of the largest computer museums in the world.
Die Menge an Ausstellungsobjekten findet sich auch sofort überall wieder. Nicht nur die Geräte selbst, sondern auch viele Verpackungen können angeschaut werden. Etwas, das man nicht in jedem Museum entdecken kann. Doch was genau ist das Ziel des Museums?
The main goal of the museum is to keep the history of the computer in a working state. So and to show the whole story of the whole evolution of how the computer has become, where it started and where are we now with the computer. And especially the pioneers in the early place, what they had to do to make it what is happening today or tomorrow. So this knowledge will be saved. And with saving of this knowledge, we will also be able to read the old storage, the data we ever created on these old computers. Who knows, in maybe 50 years somebody still finds a 3.5-inch disc or maybe a CD, and who knows how these things can be read. Well, we will be there. We will know how these things can be read, and we will make sure that this knowledge is saved.
Anders als die Deutschen haben die Niederländer das Aufkommen von Computern nicht widerwillig angenommen, ganz im Gegenteil.
And what most people don't realize is how big the Netherlands were in using computers. Most people think of the US of creating computers, which is true. The US is the pioneer when it comes to creating computers. Brands like Commodore and Atari, Apple, IBM, that's all American brands. The other big country that was creating computers was the UK, with making computers cheap. Computers like Sinclair, Acorn, Amstrad, New Brain. Those are relatively cheap computers compared to the American computers. But one of the pioneers when it comes to using computers were the Netherlands. From halfway in the 70s, people were using computers already. There was even a TV course, national TV course, on how to use a computer in 1979. In 1980, schools were using computers. There were actually computers in schools and people were using computers at schools. And the Netherlands are really forward in those things. And it's also quite interesting in other countries, for example Germany. Germany had a lot of computers in the beginning, but they were all German brands, and there's a really limit in brands they used in Germany. The Commodore and Atari was quite big, but Dragon was not really big in Germany. In the Netherlands, this is completely different. The Netherlands, we basically used all computers that were available in the US and all computers that were available in the UK, and we had Dutch computers. So we had a lot of different computer brands in the Netherlands. Currently we have about 1,500 unique computer models in the Home Computer Museum. And those are all sold in the Netherlands.
Da wundert es auch nicht, dass sich in den Niederlanden selbst einige Computerfirmen gegründet haben. Ein Computerdesign wird auch heute immer wieder mit großem Interesse angeschaut. Doch die wenigsten wissen, dass diese retrofuturistischen Schönheiten aus den Niederlanden stammen. Die Rede ist von Holborn Computer.
Well, the Holborn Computers is really an outstanding computer. Also, it's business, and what we learn, it's really interesting. What the story we tell in the Home Computer Museum is the mistakes they made. The Holborn Computers made a few mistakes, and that's why nobody knows them right now. The company started in 1979 by two people, and the idea was to create a computer that was looking nice for smaller businesses. At that time, for businesses, there was only the big IBM or the big Univac or maybe digital. They had big computers, but there were big computers and they had terminals, and these terminals were all looking basically the same, like an egg or just a small terminal, which didn't look particularly nice. So the first idea was to create a system that looked nice and was available for smaller businesses. So the first Holborn they created was the 9110. That was a terminal. It's actually a beehive terminal. They completely ripped out the internals of the beehive and put it into a nice looking design case. That's literally it. But they also created their own server, which is called the Holborn 9100. That's a big fridge looking case, and that was intended to be, somewhere hidden. So the customer, especially dentists, for example, there were a lot of dentists using this computer. So it looked nice. When you come in, you have this nice looking computer, and the dentist could use this computer. The server was also intended for smaller businesses. So they put all the software, the operating system called Holborn operating system, and the software and the customer data, they put into a read-only memory inside the computer, which is really fast. If you turn on the computer, you have instantly everything up and running, nearly instantly. Compared to a big system where you have to load from tape or disk or something like that. So that was really convenient, and that's one of the key features. And it was a growth system, so you can buy the cheaper one, which is 7100, which supports 1 or 2 people. And if that was not enough, you can just go to a bigger version, which was the 9100, which can support up to 6 users at the same time. However, one of the big downsides of using software in read-only memory is if you have a bug in the software or your customer changes name, then you have a problem, because you have to send that system back to the manufacturer, in this case in Enschede, where they have to replace the ROM, or they have to go to your place and replace the ROM, because it's not something you do by yourself at the time. So eventually they figured out maybe we should do something with CPM, so you can actually boot an operating system. And that's when they created the 6110. The 6110 is a Holborn 9110, so the terminal with another board shoved above it, or below it actually. So there's a main board below the original terminal main board, which holds a Z80 CPU, and it can boot from a floppy disk, like many other brands could at the time. So including IBM, including Univac, they also all used CPM. However, it was 1982, and IBM just released the IBM personal computer, which ran MS-DOS or PC-DOS, and Holborn simply couldn't compete anymore. They were too expensive, and the IBM was relatively cheap, especially the personal computer of IBM. So after producing 100 Holborn 6110s, the company went bankrupt. And only 200 of these computers are made worldwide, and that includes the servers. I don't know how much there are. I know we have 5 of them. They're extremely rare to get because the company is ceased to exist a long time ago. They used 8-inch floppy disks. So, and if you the last released is 1983 or late 1982, and they were still using 8-inch floppy disks to boot and to store their data, which is a weird decision, using 8-inch, because the 8-inch floppy drive is needs an external power supply to begin with. They did, however, create a prototype using 5¼ disk drives. There were 2 prototypes with a 5¼ disk drive attached to it. Those were called the Holborn 6500. We know where they are. We don't have that one, unfortunately, yet, but we're trying to get it. However, we did have something more interesting, which is the prototype of a prototype. So we have a new case with an original Holborn inside, 6100, and it still only supports 8-inch floppy drives, but it's the new case. And the new case later became the case with a 5¼ inch on top of it. So we found this prototype of a prototype, and that's, as far as we know, the only one existing in the world.
Eine andere Computerfirma aus dem Land der Tulpen ist die Firma Tulip. Der Name könnte nicht mehr right on the nose sein.
Oh yeah, actually the company started in 1979 as a company called CompuData, and they were importing computers and printers. For example, the Epson printers, Star printers, and also the XD Sorcerer computer. They imported into the Netherlands. Eventually, the CompuData brand even took over the production of the XD Sorcerer. In 1983, instead of copying or using a computer from the US, they developed their own computer, a full 16-bit computer running CP/M, based on the Intel 8086. And they wanted to have it a really Dutch-sounding name. And when you think of the Netherlands, you think of tulips and other things, windmills, but yeah, tulips for some reason was the one that they really liked. So they created a new computer called the CompuData Tulip System 1. And they liked the brand Tulip so much that they eventually renamed the company from CompuData to Tulip Computers. And Tulip Computers became one of the largest computer brands in Europe. It was the number 4 selling computer in Europe, I think. They were basically IBM PC compatible computers. There was nothing really special about them. You can say a few things were special. They were the first to manufacture a mainboard with USB integrated on the mainboard. They were the first brand that sold computers with pre-installed operating systems. So they had a whole manufacturing line where they actually can, where you had MS-DOS or Microsoft Windows installed on your computer before you even opened the box. But eventually they also took over the brand name Commodore, or actually they bought Escom, and with Escom they bought the brand name Commodore, and they started to bring all the people to court that misused the name Commodore, and eventually that cost him a lot of money, and basically they couldn't keep up with competition from cheap countries like Japan and Korea and Taiwan. So they had to sell off a lot of their stuff, and eventually the brand name existed until 2008 roughly, but by then it wasn't manufacturing any more computers. It was just a shadow of their former self. So yeah, it's a sad story, but again a story about how small business decisions eventually led to the demise of a total brand which was really big, which happened a lot in the computer world, I have to say.
Und damit es mal erwähnt ist, auch die Elektronikfirma Philips stammt aus den Niederlanden. Doch das Thema gehen wir zu einem späteren Zeitpunkt an. Im Homecomputer Museum gibt es extrem viel zu entdecken. Bei den Konsolen steht zum Beispiel eine Pepin, mega selten, vor allem in Europa. Ein Amiga, der aus der Softwarefirma Psygnosis stammt, ein Amiga, der bei der NASA im Einsatz war, eine gigantische Sammlung von Raubkopien, ja, kein Witz. Auch Apple Computer und Commodore gehören selbstverständlich zum Portfolio dazu. Und viele Geräte sind auch nutzbar. Als ich mit dem Sysop der Wintermute BBS zu einem privaten Besuch im Museum war, haben wir mit einem Altair gespielt und einen Nadeldrucker angeworfen. Und so richtig schön Krach gemacht. Ganz nebenbei steht auch ein Teil der größten PC-Big-Box-Spielesammlung der Welt als Dauerleihgabe dort. Seit 2016 gibt es das Museum, das aber nicht nur Museum ist. Es ist auch ein Repair-Shop, wo defekte Computer repariert werden. Das Angebot wird gut genutzt und hilft dem Museum, sich zu finanzieren, denn nur durch den Eintritt ist es finanziell nicht möglich zu überleben. Eine andere Möglichkeit, das Museum zu unterstützen, sind Patenschaften für Geräte. Überall steckt viel Liebe im Detail. Selbst die Webseite spiegelt dies wider mit vielen Informationen über die Ausstellungsstücke des Museums. Das Homecomputer Museum rettete sogar ein Stück niederländische Technikgeschichte. Aber was es damit auf sich hat? Das fragt ihr am besten bei eurem Besuch vor Ort. Denn am Ende geht es hauptsächlich darum, die Geschichten hinter den Computern zu erzählen. Und davon gibt es sehr viele. Das Personal ist super freundlich und wer kein Niederländisch spricht, kommt hier am besten mit Englisch weiter.